Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, and today we're going to be taking a look at the state of Florida and their new congressional maps, or lack thereof, for the upcoming November midterm elections and likely to stay in place for the next decade. Now, the reason why we're talking about this is because Governor Ron DeSantis has made some pretty bold moves over the past couple of weeks. He has been at constant opposition to the Republican legislature, saying that he was going to veto any map that included the VRA-drawn 5th Congressional District in the state of Florida. Now, that was a majority black district that was meant to protect the interests of minority voters in Washington, D.C., but Governor Ron DeSantis actually declares that that district itself is unconstitutional, whereas the Florida Republican legislature says, wait a second, the removal of the map is unconstitutional. Now, comes down to a tricky fight because the Florida legislature has been trying to pass maps for months now. They have been putting forth different forms of congressional maps, really trying to get Governor Ron DeSantis and his seal of approval, but it looks like they're not going to be getting it at all. Now they have decided to step back and say, okay, Ron DeSantis can actually draw the maps himself. This is a very strange move. It's something that people aren't really expected to see because the point is that the legislature provides some type of check and balance on the governor. Now it seems like they're working directly in conjunction and not in the way that you would on necessarily a bill, but instead not providing their own congressional maps, unlike what is required by their constitution, instead allowing for Governor Ron DeSantis to propose a map and they will instead vote on it amongst themselves. And it is near guaranteed that whatever Governor Ron DeSantis proposes will end up passing, which means that now Ron DeSantis, as the governor, has complete and total control over how this map is drawn. It is very evident based off of previous maps that he has proposed that they will move forward with an electoral gerrymander. They will intentionally try to dilute and remove Democratic voices across the state, but I can't say that it comes as a shock. I think the state of Florida really surprised me when I saw that Ron DeSantis ended up moving in the direction of the Florida Republican legislature ended up moving in the direction of not being super aggressive. You know, when I saw their initial proposals, when it came down to the older maps, I can actually show you them here. What this was simply maintaining the status quo while shoring up some Republicans and adding an additional Republican seat. Knowing that Republicans have complete and total control over this process, I was quite surprised. Surprised because in many other states, such as Ohio, North Carolina, and Texas and other states along the union, the Republican Party, when in complete control, has decided to gerrymander the state, sometimes into extremities. And I think seeing Florida as a prime opportunity, the third largest state in the union, and Republicans decided against it, I am quite surprised, to say the least. I think, I was really expecting to see an overwhelmingly gerrymandered map, but that's not what they put forth. They put forth this map in which I think Governor Ron DeSantis thought was a bit too weak for the Republican Party. I think he saw it and said, they should go to further extremes. He probably, was looking at the other maps from other Democratic states, such as New York, or even states that didn't exactly draw their maps in quote-unquote biased ways, but still ended up obviously gerrymandered, such as California. He saw that and said Florida needs to fight back, especially considering that he is now very much going to be, at least in the future, running for president of the United States. That is near confirmed by many people close to him, and also the fundraising numbers that he has, and just the way that he's been treating American politics. He very much sees the presidency as his endgame. If he can go to the Republican Party in a primary, in a contested one at that, and say, I made Florida draw maps that were more favorable in favor of the GOP, I fought my own legislature to ensure that Republicans would be able to be better off nationwide, he will get some type of recognition and gain traction for that. I also think that this really plays into his level of influence. I think when you see the governor here completely disregarding what the Republican legislature is doing, it'd be one thing if it was the Democratic Party, but on this hand, it's the Republican Party. They have an exceptionally large majority in the state of Florida, and they are telling Ron DeSantis, we are not going to be drawing a map that is exceptionally gerrymandered. And he's saying, I don't care that you draw the maps. We are going to do things my way. And that's exactly what happened. He got his way completely. And now they've decided to say, you can draw the maps and we will vote on them. So this is a huge blow to the Democratic Party. They've called this move already dangerous and, setting bad precedent because, quite frankly, it is. If you're looking at this from a nonpartisan standpoint, you find that the governor is completely disregarding what the Constitution has outlined and the roles and responsibilities of the state legislature simply because he wants the map to be more conservative. He wants the map to be more gerrymandered. And it looks like he's going to get his way. This is the map that Governor Ron DeSantis proposed that the legislature shot down and said that they weren't going to move forward with this because it was a too egregious gerrymander and it was unconstitutional because of the Voting Rights Act being violated and cracked. The 5th district that used to be, let's see here, A Democratic stronghold under the old map, Democrat plus 21, was turned into a district that was Republican plus 15. So the Democratic Party obviously was angry about this map. The Republicans said that this map wouldn't hold up in court and that it was just too much of a gerrymander for them to be comfortable passing it, yet Ron DeSantis proposed it anyway. When they shot it down, people thought that it was going to be, potentially considered, but it never ended up making the light of day until we are now in this position where Ron DeSantis consistently vetoed new congressional maps. I mean, just put this all into perspective, he is vetoing the map that Republicans are drawing by and for themselves because he wants a more aggressive map. How exactly is it more aggressive? Well, here's what it does. Right now, the Democratic Party has about 12 seats in the state of Florida. 11 seats. The Republicans have 16. The Democrats have been able to win in some competitive districts. You have Charlie Crist winning in the 13th district. You have Stephanie Murphy winning in the 7th district. And these are districts that Biden is only winning potentially by single digits. And keeping that in mind, what you're finding is that what Ron DeSantis has is a map that would draw out Stephanie Murphy into a Republican plus 14 district, previously Democrat plus 5. You have Charlie Crist now drawn into a Republican plus 14 district. Previously, he was in a district that was Republican plus 1. You're looking at the surrounding areas where you find Republicans sort of shored up and solidified in terms of their victories. You find down here that the 28th and the, let's see if we can find it, the 27th district aren't touched too heavily, but they are changed. They are changed in a way that goes from Democrat plus 4 to Republican plus 1. And it does actually unsolidify the 26th, now 28th district, just slightly, but nothing super substantial. If you take a look at the Orlando metro area, you're finding that the 7th district again goes to Republican plus 14, and the 9th district, which was Democrat plus 4, is shored in. So you're looking at Stephanie Murphy being completely expunged, and this turning into a Trump plus, I think, maybe 18, 19 point district here, meaning that Democrats just simply aren't going to win there. They've removed a district entirely up here. They removed one down here. They've removed one down here. That's already 3 pickups for the GOP, and they get an additional one because of the addition of a new congressional district. At the end of the day, what this does is create 18 Republican-leaning seats, which means straight off the bat, the Republican Party in every election year is going to win the majority of seats from the state of Florida. Back in 2018, the Democratic Party nearly overcame the Republican Party when it came down to districts. They nearly were able to overcome them, and that should be how the case is, and that's what the Republican Party wanted to maintain. They didn't want to, dilute the Democratic Party's voices to the same extent that Ron DeSantis wants to. They frankly wanted to make a map that was competitive and provided accountability for their politicians, even if it didn't necessarily benefit them politically. And I do think a lot more went into the thinking of that map than just simply wanting to give the Democratic Party a chance at victory, obviously, because these are maps drawn by Republicans. But I do want to say that I do think the Republican Party in the legislature truly kept in mind the fact that there were Democrats in Florida that should be fairly represented. And the maps that they proposed would have gave the Democratic Party an opportunity in good election years for themselves to win 13 out of the 28 districts. It's not a majority, but 13 to 15 is a lot better than what this map could very well shape up to be of at most 18 to 10 for the Democratic Party, and at the worst, 20 to 8. You're talking about a difference here of 5 seats for the GOP, which will definitely shape the national map better for the GOP. The national overview right now shows the Republican Party losing 6 seats. 5 highly competitive seats are being removed, and Democrats are gaining 10. Once this Florida map is confirmed, because I don't really think he's going to change much from where he is right now, the Democrats actually will be walked back. They will lose Democratic-leaning seats, and Republicans will gain. It will level out the playing field to a point where the Democratic Party has lost most major advancements. Now, I would like to argue that, on one hand, that this is a counteracting of what we expected, but I think that Ron DeSantis isn't also doing this as a reactionary method and very much would have done this regardless. I think Ron DeSantis is someone who very clearly has future political aspirations, sees this as a talking point in the future, and can benefit the GOP in one way, meaning that all of these representatives that might have been elected now under the new Ron DeSantis map that might not have been before also are going to be willing to work with him more, simply because they're in their positions because of him. When you look at the districts that Democrats probably were going to win easily with their incumbents, or might be able to win easily in a blue wave year, that are simply impossible to win now, these incumbents and these Republicans are going to have to thank Ron DeSantis later down the line, and that's political power that he's going to want to take advantage of. And I think that he very well will take advantage of that, looking at where he stands right now and how vehement he is about these maps passing. So now that the Republicans have sort of set this precedent that governors can draw new congressional maps, it also is a bit dangerous for 10 years down the line when we're in a similar predicament. where a legislature and a governor can't seem to agree. And knowing that this does go to the courts, I think the Republicans don't really want to push this off too much further. There already is a court case dealing with the congressional maps, and I think what they want to do is pretty much preempt any type of discussion about a fair map being drawn, about the Supreme Court ruling and unfavorable ruling. Even though Ron DeSantis has very much dominated the court with his own appointments, there is a possibility that they do walk back on him. If you take a look at other states, even my home state of Maryland, where a Democratic appointed judge ended up turning on her own political party simply because a gerrymander was deemed too egregious. If it doesn't actually get to the courts in the state of Florida, there is no real way for, the map to be struck down. The only people who really have that power right now to drastically change these maps are Ron DeSantis and the Republican legislature. And if they're giving up complete and total control to Ron DeSantis in what MSNBC would declare as bending the knee, they're pretty much, saying that we're going to listen to what he says, and that's exactly what's going to be. It's an ego boost for Ron DeSantis. It's telling him, you are very powerful. You are even contradicting your own state legislature, and they are bowing down. Those hundreds of, representatives and legislatures and chief of staffs and assistants here all saying, we will listen to Ron DeSantis, sending out a joint statement to the public and to his office, saying that we won't even propose our own iteration for you to consider, that we will just listen to you and vote on your map. It is very clear that they don't want to continue this drama much longer, and that they are willing to benefit their own party I mean, the only real reason why they were pushing back, I think, is because number one, or I guess multiple reasons. Number one, the state of Florida has already rejected gerrymandering multiple times. It was added into the Constitution by a citizens referendum, and you saw overwhelming support for that. Next, you also have the state of Florida, which doesn't exactly find similar trends to the rest of the nation. It's a very hard to predict state, and by maintaining the status quo, what they would actually be doing is potentially benefiting the GOP, because many of the areas with high Hispanic populations with the current district outlines that were drawn by the state legislature could be drawn in ways that end up turning these blue districts into red districts, whereas Ron DeSantis probably isn't going to capture that in as well as these state legislatures who are able to go to these districts and understand them a bit more than maybe the governor's mansion or, people close to him. I do think that, looking at our congressional map from Ron DeSantis, there were some places where you do see shoring up of incumbents and, moving out of Democratic districts into Republican districts. But I do want to say that I do think that the state legislature is a bit more careful and curated about what they do when it comes down to the maps, while also appeasing the voters that don't seem to be or wouldn't be too happy with a gerrymandered map. I think that's something that we all need to consider as well, that the Republican Party is trying to play it safe, or at least their own political future and what it looks like in terms of the outward view on the Florida congressional maps, whereas Ron DeSantis just simply doesn't care, because the governorship right now for him is a stepping stone, and he will use what he can for political ammunition and weaponization for his future presidential bid. I think we are ignoring the very real fact that Ron DeSantis is doing a lot of this for theatrics. I think a lot of what he does is because he has political aspirations, and it becomes increasingly more evident as the time goes on. As he calls out politicians that have nothing to do with his state, as he goes to different states and visits them to provide, advice and speeches on different topics, when he, openly floats with this idea potentially of him running, I think a lot of what he does, obviously, is for political purpose. And I think this redistricting debacle is no different. But at the end of the day, there is one party, of course, that will benefit from this, and that is the Republican Party. What he is asking the legislature to do is draw maps that are better for their own party. And I think because they have, pushed back so much but are now willing, I think they're simply just going to give it up and say, okay, we will move forward with your map. I can't imagine they will face him with strong opposition, especially considering that they won't even give him another proposal. I would understand maybe if they were going to put up a last fight where they were going to draw a map similar to his, but not as much of a gerrymander, and maybe see if he was willing to sign off on it. I do think the only concern here for the GOP is that because they did crack the 5th congressional district, what was Democrat plus 21 and now turns into Republican plus 16 plus 15, that this map will be ruled unconstitutional and will be back to the drawing board. And that could very well be a reality. I mean, looking at the fact that there is a very clear violation of the Voting Rights Act, it seems as if at least some court will say that this map can't stand. I don't really want to expend too much more time talking about congressional redistricting across the nation, but if we have to, we will. Right now, we are waiting on 3 states: New Hampshire, Missouri, Florida. Florida is probably the most consequential, because if you take a look at the remaining number of districts left, you have about, let's see here. In terms of those who have not been confirmed, 38 districts, and the majority of them, overwhelmingly, come from the state of Florida. There's 8 from Missouri, there's 2 from New Hampshire, and 28 of them come from the state of Florida at this point in time, which means we have a bit of a waiting game to go, but we are very, very close to the end. I'm super excited to see, my first election night with the House ratings and the House election predictions and things of that nature, but we need to actually get to that finalized point, and this only puts us a little bit further. I don't necessarily agree with, Ron DeSantis moving forward with these new gerrymandered maps, but I think it's a product of his obstruction and his unwillingness to work with the Republican legislature, which sort of makes sense if you're considering and evaluating his future political aspirations. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 congressional redistricting election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.